What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Bank of America ROVAL 400 for our sixth and final road course race of the season. Although we have a bit of a twist this week, because I know the road courses have been extremely boring this year, which is usually a good thing for DFS purposes. Honestly, the road courses for me have been my best tracks, even though it's an absolute snoozer to watch. But they have brought back stage breaks at the end of stages, so we're going to actually have to pit, or whatever it may be. Some guys will take the points. Some guys will pit before that, so they cycle back to the front of the field. So while it's probably going to be more entertaining to watch, it does make it a little bit less projectable for DFS purposes, but it shouldn't be anything too bad. And plus, we have seen excitement at this track before, and with this being the cutoff race for the round of 8, I think we're in for a good one. Anyway, if this happens to be your first time here, which I highly doubt, I'm Pennell, and I break down NASCAR and NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. If you like what you see today, or even if you don't, consider liking the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, would mean to me in the comments, be rude, call me ugly, I don't care either way, but I would love to hear from you. And really quick, I do have to mention the sponsor of the show, Prize Picks and Underdog, and promo code CPEN on either site can get you an instant deposit match bonus up to $100. No strings attached, it is free money. Use it to your advantage, and both sites run promos just about every single week throughout the week, so highly recommend it. Play on both all the time, although Florida's trying to get rid of it, so hopefully that doesn't end up happening, but I will enjoy it while I can last. So help me, help you. Sign up if you are a new user over there, and use the link down below in the description or the pinned comment. So as far as the strategy is concerned here, Charlotte ROVAL, so we have a road course, which typically means we're not too concerned about dominators. Obviously, if you pick the main guy that leads the most laps in your lineup and they happen to finish up front, that's just icing on the cake. But when rostering drivers, place differential so far road courses this year has been really tough, especially without having stage breaks. But since we have that this week, it does make it easier for those guys starting in the back to be able to catch back up, because we're going to bunch the field a guaranteed 2 times, and we'll probably end up seeing more than that, especially with this being the cutoff race. Tensions are high. We'll probably get a caution or 2 throughout, which we have seen here at the Charlotte ROVAL. So that's going to make it easier for just guys to get bunched past guys on pit road and whatever it may be. With guys selling out for stage points, if they're not doing that in the back, obviously, which they can't because they're going to be in the back anyway, that's just going to help them leap forward a little bit. So it's a little bit different than what we have been doing, because I've really just been playing everybody up front with maybe a couple guys in the teens, and that has been working out generally. Although this weekend, I do think we can start to look at place differentials a little bit more. But other than that, it's going to be pretty similar to what we have been doing. I still want drivers that are starting close to the front that we think can finish up front, because we have seen passing still be very difficult at the road courses this season. And finally, moving on to the driver by driver breakdown, I do have to mention one thing first, and that is, of course, Patreon is offering their free-week trials, and they completely revamped their website, so it looks pretty clean now. But if you want to check it all out, all the extra content, projections, sim scores, cheat sheets, data sheets, the optimizer, ownership projections, the awesome Discord community, which we're in there 24/7, although this part of the season mainly in NFL. Links down in the description or the pinned comment for that. And again, you can try it out completely free for a week. And I do cover the NFL in a very similar fashion. So if you like the NASCAR stuff, you'll probably like the NFL content as well. Anyway, let's get into it here. And we'll start with the drivers in the 10K range. Obviously, all exceptional road course drivers: Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Tyler Reddick. We'll start up top with the man Chase Elliott, 10.5 on DK, 14 over on FanDuel, the most expensive driver on both sides, starting just inside the top 10 here in P8. Opened up as the odds-on favorite to win this race over in Vegas. These are not the most up-to-date odds that you're probably seeing right now if you're looking after I record this video. These are prior to practice and qualifying, so I'm not really sure how much these will change, if any. But, with a guy like Kyle Larson, qualifying dead last, those odds I'm sure will go up, and other guys will go down a bit. Like Tyler Reddick, he's at plus 700. That will probably not be the case once these odds reopen. But either way, it's hard not to like Chase Elliott here. We know he's not going to be points racing because he's not in the playoffs, so he's going to be in the optimal strategy to win this race. And at some point in the next-gen era, he is going to win a road course. His numbers are way too good to say otherwise. Like, I realize a lot of people say, oh, Chase Elliott's washed up at the road courses ever since they changed the type of car because he's just not getting into victory lane, which, no, he's not winning races, but he's right up there with them every single week. So we have a 10-race sample size for Chase Elliott at road courses in this car, and he's got the second-best average finish, only behind Chris Buescher, the second best average running position, the second best drive rating, the most top 5s, the most dominator points. So he's right there with them. So hard not to like Chase Elliott here, and definitely one of the top plays on the entire board. I would potentially say the top play, but when you have Kyle Larson, who is also excellent at road courses and just one of the best cars overall all season long, no matter what kind of track we are at, and starting in 36, like as long as he doesn't wreck his car out like he did in practice, hard to avoid him here starting in 36. So if you are playing cash games, he is a lock for that. Even in tournaments, it's hard to avoid him. Now, if this was one of our road courses where we didn't have any stage breaks, I would say there is concern here because maybe his upside gets capped to around 20th if there's no cautions. But since we're guaranteed at least 2, he's going to be able to get bunched back up, and I'm assuming he's going to be a top 10, top 15 contender. And that's really all we need at a road course where dominator points don't really matter. So, loving Kyle Larson, obviously. William Byron, 10-2. He's starting in 14th. Obviously, he's already locked into the next round. With him kind of starting mid-pack, he's a viable play. I would prefer Elliott and Larson in this price range, and even Tyler Reddick right there in the poll. Very decent chance he could lead a large chunk of this race. I mean, we know how good he is at road courses. Look fast in practice. Obviously, the fastest in qualifying if we pull up the practice numbers here. P2 in the 1 lap, P1 in the 5, P1 in the 10. William Byron didn't really show too much in practice to make you too excited about it. Now, I don't think he's going to be a borderline top 15, top 20 car. We saw last time we had a road course, he absolutely dominated it, but also keep in mind he was near the very front for that. So for me, just my initial rankings, I have not yet in projections or anything like that, but I'd probably have to rank this tier Kyle Larson number 1, Chase Elliott number 2, just because you get a little bit of extra cushion there, starting in 8th compared to 1st, and then Reddick, and then William Byron. Dropping down to the 9K range, we have Martin Truex Jr., $9,800. He's starting at 11th, and didn't really fire off too quick, but as the story was for all the Toyotas, they were super fast in longer run. Now I realize we're only talking 5 laps, 10 laps for a few, but if you're just ranking this, we have Reddick P1 for the 5 lap. We have Bubba Wallace P2, which was kind of surprising, although he always seems to practice pretty well at the road courses, but during the race, it's not always the same story. Truex in 3rd, Hamlin in 4th, and then I believe, Ty Gibbs in 5th. So that's the top 5 spots in the 5 lap run averages, all Toyota. So it looks like they're going to be pretty speedy here on Sunday, but starting at 11th, I'm fine with Truex. He's won a road course this year. His numbers have been overall solid. He's not like a complete standout play, but he's certainly in the player pool. And then for Denny Hamlin, I feel like a lot of the thoughts I had for Truex should probably apply here. Now, I think Truex is a better road course racer. Denny Hamlin's definitely been amazing at qualifying at these so far. Now, I know he's starting in 9th, but that's because he had an issue in qualifying, so he didn't actually get to finish his lap. And Ty Gibbs didn't either, so that's why he's not starting P10. Ty Gibbs is. But I'm okay with him. But if he does happen to have to go to the rear to fix any damage on his car, like practice and qualifying just ended, so I didn't really get to hear too much of what happened to Denny Hamlin on that lap. Keep an eye out for that, because if he had to drop to the rear, I just don't think I'd play any of him at all. Starting in 9th, being scored from the back. Oh, being scored from 9th and then starting in the back, I should say. Christopher Bell, he's in the tournament pool. Like if Reddick doesn't lead early on, it's probably Christopher Bell. We've seen him have speed at the road courses, and he has won here in the past. And I like that price tag over on FanDuel. Kind of easy to fit him in there. And I guess non-Reddick lineups, you can play them together, but you pretty much need them to finish in the top 3 together. Kyle Busch, $9,300. He's starting in 5th. He's in a bit of a hole here after a poor performance at Talladega. We know he's good at the road courses, though, and honestly, I could see him kind of having a solid race. I mean, if you're looking at the road course numbers overall, so far this season, they have been fine for Kyle Busch. It's not like he's been the absolute class of the field, but he does have 3 top 5s, which is tied for the most of all drivers with Chase Elliott. Hasn't really been much of a dominator. Did come close to winning at Coda. Kind of cut Tyler Reddick a break here for not killing him in one of the first turns, but Busch is like a similar play to a Christopher Bell, honestly. I'd probably have very similar exposure there. Michael McDowell, $9,100. He's starting in 13th. I think he's probably one of the better plays. The problem is, though, super slow in practice, which I didn't like. 31st in the 1 lap, but we didn't get anything after that. And with how good Michael McDowell has been at road courses this year, and even a little bit of that skewed because he had like 30 issues at the most recent one, which I think was Watkins Glen, but he was super fast in that one. Honestly, had a race-winning car. Overall, his numbers are exceptional. He has a win at one earlier this season at the Indy ROVAL. So I definitely think he's cash viable. With him being out of the playoffs, it's not like we have to worry about him points racing either way. So McDowell makes a lot of sense there. Same with AJ Allmendinger. You don't get quite the place differential that Michael McDowell offers you, but also not in the playoffs. So he's going to be gunning for the win here, which we know he can do. So I am 100% fine with AJ Allmendinger as well. If you're pulling out the practice numbers, I believe he was decent. Yeah, P5 in the 1 lap and P6 in the 5. So nothing to be too concerned about there. Should be a top 5 contender throughout the majority of the day. Chris Buescher, $8,800. He's about as consistent as it comes at the road courses here, starting in 20th. P20 in the 1 lap in practice, but top 10 in the 5 lap. And we kind of mentioned him earlier, but it's just hard to find a better model of consistency at the road courses in the next gen era. And if you're looking at the numbers this year, average finish of 8th, running position of 12.6. You expand that even further to just every road course race in the next gen era, which is an 11 race sample size. The average finish is 8.5, running position of 13.8. 2 top 5s and 9 top 10s, which is actually the most of all drivers, 10 top 15s, which is also the most of all drivers. So I would say there's a pretty decent chance we see Chris Buescher competing for a top 10, and he's in the 8K range, so I do like that. Ryan Blaney, 8,600 bucks. He's starting in 17th. Got the win at Talladega, which was really nice to see, so doesn't really have to worry too much about what he does this week. Obviously, he still want to have a good race, and he wants to improve the road course program over there at Penske, which obviously not been really up to par so far this year. P12 in the one lap in practice. I'm not super excited about playing Blaney. I'd rather play Chris Buescher here. So he's kind of a guy that just whatever the optimizer gives me, I'll take it. On FanDuel, looks a little bit more viable there, under 8K, but on DraftKings, I'm not excited about playing Blaney because that road course performance this year has been absolutely dreadful. 21.4 in the average finish, 23.6 in the average running position, and a driver rating below 60. So it definitely has not been too pretty. Daniel Suarez, we know that in the past, Trackhouse has had speed at these road courses, but honestly, it hasn't been smooth sailing so far this season. Ross Chastain hasn't been great. Daniel Suarez's finishes have been very poor. So starting in third, while I don't want to completely cross him out, I feel like I'll probably end up having more exposure to a guy like Ryan Blaney here and definitely Chris Buescher. And don't forget, right above them, while they're not in the 8K range specifically, it's still less than $1,000 difference, and you can get guys like Kyle Busch, Michael McDowell, AJ Allmendinger, which look a lot more appealing. Chastain, similar both to Daniel Suarez, but you get more PD, so if I had to pick between the two, it's probably going to be Ross for me, although didn't really practice that great either, and their 5-lap averages were pretty close, so a little bit concerned there for Trackhouse, and Chastain needs some magic this week for his advancement in the playoffs, and I don't see him winning this race, but you can never count it out here at the Roval. Joey Logano, 8,200 bucks, very cheap over on FanDuel. He's starting in 7th, 9th in practice in the one lap. He could be one of those guys that's just kind of a sneaky play that's just in the top 10 all day, where you don't really want to play him, but at the same time, if he just stays within the top 10, doesn't make any mistakes, he can be viable there. So I think he should be on our tournament radars. And he looks a little bit more appealing to me than a guy like Daniel Suarez or Ross Chastain. Ty Gibbs, $8,000. He's starting in 10th. I love him this week. I like the price point. I like him every single time we're at a road course. Top 5 pretty much across the board in practice. P6 in the 1, P5 in the 5, and P4 in the 10. Was great at Watkins Glen. I believe Watkins Glen was the most recent road course race, right? I'm remembering that correctly. William Byron dominated, pretty sure. But Ty Gibbs ran very well there. And I think, and at some point, Ty Gibbs will run a race in the NASCAR Cup Series. And I wouldn't be too surprised if it happens to be at a road course. Dropping down to the 7K range, we have the old man, Kevin Harvick, $7,800 on DraftKings. Got caught cheating last week with the windshield, although they said it happened during the race. I don't know, believe whatever you want to believe. Doesn't matter to me, but almost won unofficially. Starting in 22nd, though, practice pretty poor, which you kind of always expect the road courses from Kevin Harvick. I swear this 4 team always qualifies anywhere from 20th to 30th, and their practice numbers are awful. But throughout the race, they just don't really make much mistakes, and then they end up getting decent finishes. As you can see, average finish this year at 19.4, running position of around 20th, which if he was starting like in the late 20s, it'd be more appealing. But with him being pretty much mid-pack there, just outside the top 20, it doesn't make it as appealing. So I don't really see myself having too much Kevin Harvick. Alex Bowman, $7,700. He looks like a lot more of appealing tournament play. I do like all the Hendrick cars here at road courses typically. And starting in 16th, 11th in the 5-lap in practice, I can get down with some Bowman. I'll never forget when he was in the 6K range at a road course. It might have been Indy and absolutely smashed at that price point. Not that it really has too much to do with this, but I'm just saying I feel like Bowman's always a little bit undervalued at these road courses. And so far this season, 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s, and 3 top 15s in a 5-race sample size after running position around 15th. I think Bowman's a fine tournament play, especially when you have guys like Austin Cindric and Chase Briscoe right here. That should soak up some ownership with all the place differential that they do have to offer. Then we have, speaking of those two, we have Cindric and Briscoe right here. If I had to pick between the two, I feel like I'd roll with Cindric. If you're looking at his overall numbers at road courses this year, it's been a lot better, and I would say he's overall the better road course racer. If you're looking at practice, Chase Briscoe was pretty sporty though, P3 in the 1 lap. Cindric was a little bit slower, but again, I trust Cindric a little bit more, and we know he doesn't have to worry about any points racing or anything like that. So I think he should be in contention to gain like close to 15-ish spots here. I'll take that all day in the 7K range. So I think he's viable for cash games. Briscoe, very similar play as well. Brett Keselowski starting in 19th. Road courses are not really his forte these days. As you can see, some pretty poor numbers all around. As good as RFK has been this year, I do think we're coming close to the end of the line here for Brett Keselowski. Bubba Wallace, $7,000. He's starting in 4th. I typically hate him at road courses, but he was pretty fast. First in the 1 lap and second in the 5 lap. Did have an amazing run at the last road course where he finished 12th, which is honestly very good for him. So as you can see, I mean, he's just been absolutely awful. And I believe I read that he has the least amount of points of all playoff drivers currently at the road courses this season. So Bubba Wallace, I think, is going to be in a little bit of a trouble this week. But if he can hold position with the speed that he has in his car, and he qualified up front, which is a massive boost to him, he doesn't have to work his way through the field. I could see it working out a bit. He's cheap enough to where I don't mind taking some flyers, but projection-wise, it's still probably not going to look great because it really is hard to trust Bubba Wallace at a road course over the course of 400 miles. Eric Jones, $6,900, kicking us off in the 6K range. Don't typically love him at the road courses. Just the numbers just aren't there for him. 5 very sample size this year, average finish just inside the top 30. I feel like he's someone we can avoid and feel pretty good about it. Only has 1 top 20 finish this season. Justin Haley looks a little bit better though. I actually don't hate him at the road courses, starting in 25th, so you get 2 extra spots here compared to Eric Jones. Practice, he about cut his in half, where he was P13 compared to P25 to Eric Jones. So I would have a slight preference there. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I mean, these guys are pretty much all the exact same plays. Ricky's not really a great road course driver, but so far this year does have an average finish inside the top 20, but I would prefer him and Haley over Eric Jones personally. Austin Dillon starting a bit too far up front for me to have a lot of interest. P22 in the 1 lap, P10 in the 5. Like, he could hang. He has been improving at road courses, but I just wish we had a little bit more PD here. I won't cross him off completely, but definitely not someone that's going to project well, I imagine. Ryan Preece probably in the same boat there. But if I had to pick between the two, I would take Preece just because you get that 3 extra spots. Zane Smith, he's starting in 34th, and he is in Todd Gilliland's car this week. So obviously we have seen Gilliland be somewhat interesting at road courses this year. I just wish we saw a little bit more in practice in the 1 lap, as he was P34, which he backed that up in qualifying. But was P19 in the 5 lap, which honestly gives me a little bit more hope there. That's better than guys like Kevin Harvick, Brett Keselowski, Rockenfeller, Austin Hill, and just a little bit off like Eric Almirola, Ryan Preece. So I think Zane will be fine starting in 34th. So as long as he doesn't screw up or anything, he should be able to gain spots. Eric Almirola just starting too far up front for me. Like, he's cheap, I get it, but more than likely he's going to move back. His numbers of road courses are just not impressive at all. Corey LaJoie was P4 in the 1 lap in practice. Didn't do anything after that. He's starting in 24th here. Road courses, I wouldn't say have been awful finish-wise for him. Is inside the top 20 for his average finish, but the only way I'm getting the Corey LaJoie is just because I'm running out of plays at the end. Like, all these guys, I don't even want to spend too much time going over it. Like, LaJoie, Rockenfeller, Austin Hill, Harrison Burton, Gillen, Lally, Ty Dillon, Josh Bilicki. Like, you don't want to play these guys. Ty Dillon's fine. If he avoids carnage, like, he should be able to contend for a top 30. Even speed-wise, he should be a little bit better than some of these guys back here. But if you're talking about guys that actually have potential to finish in the top 25, LaJoie and Rockenfeller are probably your only options. If Gillen was in his regular car, I would say him, but since he's in the 51, the upside is pretty limited.